Hello, in this video I'll be playing through episode 10 of Interrogation, You Will Be Deceived, illustrating how you can get a confession and win the episode and the game, hopefully without having to resort to any sort of enhanced interrogation techniques. Well, in this episode you can't either way. This video is intended to help you if you're stuck, but I strongly suggest you stop the video once you feel you have what you need to finish the conversational puzzle on your own, so that you don't ruin your experience of the game. There are many ways to finish an episode, and I will only be showing you one of them, so try to get back in the game and discover your own. Let's start with the case before us. So what we have are the three Liberation Front members, right here in front of us. We have Anaba Lee, a reputed sociology professor. She does lectures, she does work analyzing the societal behavior in failed states. She has very left-leaning views, and she is a leader of an international terrorist organization. Secondly, we have Damascus Reed. He's a well-known entrepreneur, business guru. He's the CEO of a very large tech enterprise, and he's also the leader of an international terrorist organization. He has very capitalist political views. Lastly, we have James Bennett, who is a former soldier. He lives in exile in the mountains with his family. We have no idea what sort of political views he has. In this episode, you are not allowed to use the recorder, to stop the recorder and use any sort of enhanced interrogation techniques. More than that, because of a deal that you signed with their lawyer, they cannot incriminate themselves with anything they say. So the strategy here is to make them incriminate each other by essentially persuading them that one of the other leaders, or maybe both of them, are a detriment to the Liberation Front, and that they should give them to us, and then they can walk free, basically. Or at least that's our strategy. That is how we should try to persuade them. I will go through these questions very fast, but I suggest that when you play the episode, actually read what they say. But there are many things to go through, as we have to extract not a confession, but basically a rat out from each and every one of them, right? So with Anabali, our strategy is she's our ideology expert, she's the ideological leader, and we want to start with this one right here, perfect equity. Basically what we want to do is go through these options, and whenever we have a choice, we want to raise her empathy or her fear with us. Depending on what perks you have, you will have different choices. I will go for an empathy on this one. I will try to raise her empathy as high as I can by agreeing with left-leaning views, trying to manipulate her that, I'm really on board with all this Marxist stuff. Sure, charisma is good, motivate and inflame, you see her empathy is rising. Keep going through these options. This is an untimed episode, so you can take your time and do whatever you want. She would focus on maintaining ideological integrity. She believes in non-discrimination, redistribution of wealth, a culture of acceptance that spans all gender and identity. So that is a very social justice sort of worldview. Keep that in mind for later. So this is her view on a left-leaning Marxist Liberation Front cell. Keep going through the options. Again, try to raise her empathy. In questions like these, be sure to try to keep to your strategy as much as possible. Don't try to mix and match, intimidate, and try to get them to trust you. Just focus on one, right? So in this one, I'll just go with people live unaware, and she says, yeah, of course, that's the insidious nature of capitalism. So again, keep going through all of these. Try to find those forks. In the discuss the real Liberation Front for a minute, you will have different options depending on what sort of missions you did, what sort of discussions you had in the past with any of these suspects or with other suspects, but we want to see what they believe about the others. So about Reed, um, they have some common social circles, but she assumes that Reed comes to her conferences only to argue with her. So we know these two don't really get along. I guess it makes sense. And about James Bennett, and James Bennett has participated in some military actions in a number of Asian countries she held lectures in. Okay. So they don't really want to talk about any real world or Liberation Front stuff. They just want to play the make-believe exercise with us. If we ask her about the ideology, she thinks that the main advantage of the Liberation Front is that it does not have one main ideology. So let's tell him that this means there must be a clear balance of power, and here I could scare her, but I will try to not. Tell her that if that balance of power would be disturbed, if one of the leaders would be put in jail, the balance of power would be disturbed, and yeah, she kind of agrees with that. So our empathy here is raising even more. So this is us going through basically all the options on the equity exercise. Let's try to change it now, and we know she doesn't like Reed and his capitalist views, and we know she has left-leaning views. So let's try to make her see the world through his eyes, and go for the absolute freedom exercise cell. Again, go through all the options. What sort of personality would the leader of that cell be like? And she tells us it would be a narcissistic know-it-all, gazing disgustedly at us, the rabble from his ivory tower. I think you're talking about Reed now. But let's try to raise her empathy. That sort of person would just pervert the front. Again, go through all the options as much as you can and try to decide which one of these will raise either fear or empathy, and try to stick to your strategy. This implies you perfectly read the suspect and their ideological view. And let's try to see if she's willing to critique Damascus. Not really. Again, keep going through the options. Again, when you play, I suggest you actually read all these. No, I'm just fishing for empathy builders or fear builders. So at this point, we've been with Anaba through the Marxist exercise. We've been with her through the anarcho-liberal exercise, and she's not willing to do anything. I think she needs more of a reason to give us one of the others. Let's switch over to Damascus. We want him as a business expert. We want him as a operations manager, and he's leading a stateless private property and dedicated to self-ownership. And he's on board with that. Again, go through the options. Try to find those stat builders wherever you can. Let's see what he thinks the ideology is. Freedom. He doesn't want to talk about any real world stuff with us. And when we ask him about Anaba, now that we've raised our empathy with him, he tells us they had an intimate relationship in Saigon, and he laughs. Let's see what Anaba thinks about that. About that. What's your connection to Damascus? He claims you had sex in Saigon, and she's very angry at that. Okay. So let's see if now she's willing to give up Reed, and she is. She tells us that the front does some good stuff, but Reed is perverting the front, so she's willing to sign a confession incriminating Damascus Reed. So we have Reed now. We can basically now charge Reed. That's just one. We need all three of them to win this episode, right? Shouldn't have kissed and told. Okay. Let's change the exercise and try to So we only have Reed. Anaba confessed about Reed. We need Reed to confess about someone else as well. Because if we go about Atanaba, she's already given him up, right? And she won't give up anyone else, just Reed. So let's see who can we make Reed to give up. Let's try to make him give up Bennett or Anaba. So let's go with where is it? Perfect equity. What Lee agrees with. Again, go through these options the best you can. Nothing here, so he's not willing to give up Anaba, most likely. He's keeping his cards close. Let's change the exercise. Let's go with burning down the world, a total cleansing, something that, for example, the priest in episode 4 believed, right? He says that's some crazy idea, but you know, we just want to raise his empathy. So when we ask him what sort of connections would this sort of leader that wants to bring down the apocalypse would need to have, he would need to keep his people close, keep them angry, keep them scared. Well, that sounds like that good group could be easily turned against you. And he says, yeah, you need to keep them occupied. So at this point, he's not talking about Lee. He's probably talking about Ben, which we haven't talked with yet. So let's keep exploring our options with the masses here. So try to go through all the options. When people would get angry, they would probably get angry at the rich. That's the usual answer. Okay. And here we want to go with this one, I think. He says we're probably right. I don't know if our empathy or our fear with him are high enough to give us anyone yet. Keep in mind, if you're clicking like this, you might hit many traps. This is a risk you have to take. I know what I'm clicking on, so you have to be careful not to hit any traps, right? Let's see if he's willing to give up anyone. Not really. So let's move on over to James Bennett. So the strategy is, with each one, you want to raise your stats as high as possible by switching through the different exercises, trying to go through the exercise that you believe they would best empathize with first, and then the one that is politically opposed to their natural views, right? So with Anaba, it was going through equity, then through anarcho-liberalism. With Bennett, we weren't through anarcho-liberalism. We tried equity. We saw nothing work, but we saw that he had some stronger opinions when we talked about the apocalyptic cell. So let's go to James Bennett. We want you to consult us as a military expert, and you are the commander of the front. He says, sir, yes, sir. And you will lead. Let's go with. We want someone to give up Anaba, so we will go with where is it? Equity. Again, go through the options as best you can. And he says, with the corners of their lips slightly lifted, giving speeches, talking too much, delegating responsibility. So he doesn't really like this sort of Anaba style. Okay, I agree. Let's agree with him. So he might be willing to give up Anaba. A culture of total acceptance from Anaba, and he's very angry at that. So he's the one that can give us Anaba. If our empathy with him is high enough, we just want to make sure that we get his empathy high enough. He says that the ideology of the front is useless. Well, it's probably a useful cover. He says that's a mistake. Okay. And he really doesn't like Anaba and her ideological debates. Would you give her up? He says, why would I give anything up to someone that has never sacrificed anything? Well, we sacrificed quite a lot of things, but we don't really want to admit that to him. let's change the exercise and go for the apocalyptic view with him. And let's see if he can give us anything. And he says a leader of this sort of cell would need real skills, hard hands-on experience. He would need to be well trained. I think most people lack, most youth today lack. So probably he agrees with modern society has made us all weak. Yes, he does. He says, my boys spend weeks in the forest alone to become hard and strong-willed. Well, if you go back to read and we talk to him about that, let's see what he believes about that. He says that sounds cruel as fuck, and yes, it does. It's cruel as fuck. Let's see if he's willing to give up Bennett. Not really. Although we can say Bennett is a monster, he's not willing to give him to us just yet. So we probably need more from him, right? We need to raise his empathy a bit more, go through all these options here. Let's tell him that Anab already confessed, he has nothing to lose, and yeah, he's willing to give up Bennett. So at this point we have Reed himself, we have Bennett, and now we just need Anaba, and probably James will give us Anaba, right? So Nanamusk has already confessed, he doesn't really care about that. We've sacrificed a lot. He's not willing to give us anything yet, right? So we have to go through these options and raise his stat. Let's see if he has anything to tell us again about any of these things. He says hope would be a driving motivator for the apocalyptic cell. What does he mean by that? By stripping us of all confidence. And he says, yes, time is the apex predator mankind faces. Let's see if now he's willing. Not yet. Okay. I need more from him. Be careful with these things. There are many traps here. This is something you have to bear in mind, that just clicking like this, if you don't know what you're doing, will be very hard, but I'm just telling you the general areas you would need to discuss with them. He's still not willing, so let's change the exercise, go for the equity one again. Let's see if we have anything here that could possibly help us. And let's talk about the real Anaba. She tells us that she's spreading her ideology, polluting the front. That's what we can tell him. He agrees. And let's tell him that Anaba would do the front a lot of harm. He agrees with that. Can you give her up to me? Yes, you can. Thank you very much. So this is how you finish episode 10. Now be careful. There are many traps in many places, so if you don't know what you're doing, don't just go around clicking on anything. The main thing to keep in mind is, first of all, you want to take them through the exercise that you think they most empathize with. Secondly, you want to take them to the opposite exercise. So for example, you want to take Anaba through the equity one, then through the anarcho-liberal one. And for each of them, you need to find not just an ideological contrast between the two leaders, you need to find a personal conflict or personal distrust. For example, Reed really doesn't like the fact that Bennett treats his children in such a cruel way, so he has a personal reason to dislike Bennett after we've shown him all the ideological reasons that they're incompatible, right? So find the personal reason and an ideological reason by going through at least those two exercises. The one they empathize with the most, in your opinion, and the complete opposite one, right? So that's the strategy that should help you win episode 10. This is a very hard episode, but it's untimed, so take your time, read through the dialogues. There are many other ways to finish this episode much more fast, efficient than I did it here. So try to get there and discover your own. Thank you very much.